Every January, millions of people promise themselves a new life. They promise to wake up earlier, to finally take care of their body, to stop procrastinating, to be more disciplined, more focused, more motivated. And every February, most of those promises quietly disappear. Not with a big failure, not with a dramatic breakdown, but slowly, silently, almost politely. So the question is not, why do people fail their New Year's resolutions? The real question is, why do we keep blaming ourselves for something that was never designed to work? Most people believe failure comes from laziness. They say things like, I just didn't want it badly enough. I lack discipline. I always quit. But that story is comforting, because if the problem is laziness, then the solution is simple. Try harder, push more, be stricter with yourself. But what if that story is wrong? What if the reason your resolutions fail has nothing to do with motivation at all? What if the real problem is that you're trying to build a new life on top of a nervous system that has been in survival mode for years? Burnout doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like being functional. You go to work, you answer messages, you do what's required, but inside, everything feels heavy. Decisions feel exhausting. Small tasks feel overwhelming. And even rest doesn't really recharge you. This is the part no one talks about when they tell you to set goals. A burned-out mind doesn't need more pressure. It needs safety. And yet, every January we do the opposite. We demand transformation from a system that is already exhausted. We don't ask, what do I actually have the capacity for right now? We ask, how much can I force myself to change? That's why motivation disappears so fast. Because motivation is not created by excitement. It's created by trust. And if you don't trust yourself anymore, no resolution will survive for long. Think about how many times you've promised yourself something and didn't follow through. Not because you didn't care, but because you were tired, overwhelmed, emotionally drained. Each time that happens, something small breaks inside. Not your discipline, your self-trust. And without self-trust, every new goal feels heavier than the last. So if you've already started this year feeling behind, unmotivated, or disappointed in yourself, this is not a failure. It's information. There is a quiet cycle that repeats itself every single year. It usually starts in January. January feels clean, hopeful, full of possibility. You feel different, more energized, more focused. You tell yourself, this time will be different. You make plans. You imagine a better version of yourself, someone calmer, more confident, more in control. And for a moment, it almost feels real. Then February arrives. The excitement fades. Life gets loud again. Work, responsibilities, unexpected stress. You miss a day, then another one. And something familiar shows up. Self-criticism. You start saying things like, I knew I couldn't do this. I always mess things up. I'm just not consistent. By March, the goal is usually gone. Not because you didn't care, but because carrying the weight of disappointment became heavier than the goal itself. This is the part most people misunderstand. They think the problem is quitting. But quitting is not the problem. The real problem is what happens emotionally every time you quit. Each broken promise teaches your nervous system one thing: don't trust yourself. And over time, your system learns to protect you from disappointment, not by motivating you, but by lowering your expectations, reducing your energy, and making you hesitate before trying again. This is why pushing harder doesn't work, because the resistance you feel is not laziness, it's self-protection. Imagine touching a hot stove. You don't need motivation to pull your hand away. Your body remembers pain and reacts automatically. Your mind works the same way. If trying has repeatedly led to shame, disappointment, or exhaustion, your system will resist trying again, not to sabotage you, but to protect you. This is why people say, "I don't know what's wrong with me." Nothing is wrong with you. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is not a lack of discipline. It's that discipline was never meant to replace safety. And until your system feels safe enough to believe that effort won't lead to pain, motivation will always be temporary. This is why so many people feel stuck. Real change does not start with big goals. It starts with something much smaller and much quieter. It starts rebuilding self-trust. Most people think self-trust comes from confidence, or success, or finally becoming the person they imagine themselves to be. But self-trust doesn't work that way. Self-trust is built the same way trust is built in any relationship. Through consistency, through small moments where words and actions align. If every promise you make to yourself feels heavy, it's not because you're weak. It's because your system doesn't believe you anymore. So instead of asking, "What big goal should I set this year?" a better question is, "What promise can I make that I cannot fail?" Not something impressive, not something that looks good on paper. Something small enough that your nervous system doesn't panic. For some people, that promise is 5 minutes. 5 minutes of movement, 5 minutes of writing, 5 minutes of silence. Not to improve, not to optimize, but to show yourself one thing: I do what I say, even when it's small. This is how trust comes back. Not through motivation, but through evidence. Each small follow-through tells your system it's safe to try again. And slowly, the resistance softens. Not because you forced it, but because it no longer needs to protect you from disappointment. This is why big goals often fail for burned-out people. Big goals feel like risk, and a system that has experienced too much pressure will always choose safety over growth. So growth must feel safe first. This is the part most motivational advice skips. It tells you to push, to hustle, to discipline yourself harder. But healing always comes before expansion. You don't need a better plan. You need a kinder starting point. And once self-trust begins to return, something unexpected happens. Motivation stops feeling like pressure. It starts to feel like permission. If this resonates, give this video a thumbs up. One of the biggest reasons people burn out is not effort itself, it's how effort feels inside their body. For many people, effort is associated with pressure, with forcing, with pushing, with proving something. So every time they try, their system prepares for pain. But effort does not have to feel like suffering. This is something we were never taught. We were taught that growth requires struggle, that progress demands sacrifice, that if it's not hard, it doesn't count. But the nervous system doesn't respond to ideas. It responds to experience. If every attempt to improve yourself has been paired with self-criticism, comparison, or fear of failure, your system will interpret effort as danger. That's why rest alone doesn't fix burnout. You can take a break, but if effort still feels unsafe, the cycle restarts as soon as you try again. Real change happens when effort begins to feel neutral. Not exciting, not heroic, just neutral. This is where direction matters more than goals. Goals are rigid. They demand outcomes. Direction is gentle. It allows adjustment. Instead of asking, "Did I succeed or fail today?" a different question changes everything. Did I show up in a way that respected my capacity? Some days, showing up means doing the thing. Other days, it means stopping early or choosing rest without guilt. This is not lowering standards. This is creating sustainability, because a system that feels respected doesn't need to rebel. It doesn't need to shut down or procrastinate or self-sabotage. It cooperates. This is what healthy motivation looks like. Not adrenaline, not fear, but a quiet willingness to keep going. And this is why comparing yourself to others is so damaging. You don't see their capacity, their support, their starting point. You only see outcomes. And your system translates comparison into threat. So if you want this year to be different, don't ask how far you should push. Ask how safe you can make the process. If you take nothing else from this, take this one thought. You do not need to become someone else to deserve a better life. You don't need a new personality, a stronger mindset, or more discipline. You need a safer relationship with yourself. Most people enter a new year already carrying exhaustion. And then they ask themselves to carry even more. More goals, more expectations, more pressure. And when that weight becomes too heavy, they blame themselves. But the truth is, nothing meaningful grows under constant force. Growth needs space. It needs patience. It needs room to breathe. This is why change that lasts is often very quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. It shows up as a small decision to stop being cruel to yourself when you're tired. It looks like choosing one promise you can keep, and keeping it, even when no one is watching. Not to prove anything, but to remind yourself that you are someone you can rely on. You don't have to fix your entire life this year. You don't have to know where you'll be in 12 months. You only need a direction that feels honest. A direction that respects your limits, your nervous system, your humanity. Some days, progress will look like action.
Other days, it will look like rest. Both count. And if you find yourself slipping back into old patterns, that doesn't erase the work you've done. It simply means you noticed. And noticing is already a form of awareness. So as this year begins, don't ask yourself how much you can change. Ask yourself how gently you can stay. Because the year doesn't need a stronger version of you. It needs a more supported one. And that is enough to begin.
What's one small promise you'll keep for yourself this year? Share it below. I'd love to hear.